Hi readers, welcome to my weekend books, in which I tell you and try to make you believe that I hadn't planned to buy any books this week, but it happened anyway. So, let's start. When the week began, the only book I had coming in was The Devil and Mrs. Davenport by Paulette Kennedy. I bought this because Mother Horror on Instagram was reading it and the description just sounded awesome. The first day of autumn brought the fever, and with the fever came the voices. Missouri, 1955. Loretta Davenport has led an isolated life as a young mother and a wife to Pete, an ambitious assistant professor at a Bible college. They're the picture of domestic tranquility until a local girl is murdered and Loretta begins receiving messages from the beyond. Pete dismisses them as delusions of a fevered female imagination. Loretta knows they're real and frightening. Defying Pete's demands, Loretta finds an encouraging supporter in parapsychologist Dr. Curtis Hanson. He sees a woman with a rare gift, more blessing than curse. With Dr. Hanson's help, Loretta's life opens up to an empowering new purpose. But for Pete, the God-fearing image he's worked so hard to cultivate is under threat. No longer in control of his dutiful wife, he sees the devil at work. As Loretta's powers grow stronger and the pleading spirits beckon, Pete is determined to deliver his wife from evil. To solve the mysteries of the dead, Loretta must first save herself. I'm looking forward to getting into this one. Not sure when I will, but it'll happen eventually. Next up, I planned Thursday to come straight home, cook supper, and read whatever it was I was reading on Thursday. But while I was on my way home, taking the back way, my car veered onto the bypass and headed to the Barnes & Noble. I don't know how it happened. I might need to get that checked out. Anywho, so, ever since I read Fourth Wing, I've been on a fantasy kick. And romantasy is really popular right now, and it's okay. I can enjoy it. But I also wanted some fantasy that was not as romantasy is. I don't mind a little romance, but I wanted more fantasy, more standard fantasy. Anywho, so I picked up Terry Goodkind, I don't know. Wizard's First Rule. I do have another book of Terry's. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I did check in my app though to make sure before I bought this that I didn't already have it. So, in Wizard's First Rule, it's book 1 of The Sword of Truth. In the aftermath of the brutal murder of his father, a mysterious woman, Colin Omnell, appears in Richard Cypher's forest sanctuary seeking help and more. His world, his very beliefs, are shattered when ancient debts come due with thundering violence. In a dark age, it takes courage to live, and more than mere courage, to challenge those who hold dominion. Richard and Colin must take up that challenge or become the next victims. Beyond awaits a bewitching land where even the best of their hearts could betray them. So see, there's a little romance in here. Yet Richard fears nothing so much as what secrets his sword might reveal about his own soul. Falling in love would destroy them, for reasons Richard can't imagine and Colin dares not say. In their darkest hour, hunted relentlessly, tormented by treachery and loss, Colin calls up Richard to reach beyond his sword, to invoke within himself something more noble. Neither knows that the rules of battles have just changed, or that their time has run out. This is the beginning. One book, one rule. Witness the birth of a legend. Sorry, midway I had to write something down, a note for later. That's how it is sometimes. So while I was in the fantasy section, I also, this was in the romance section, but on a table with fantasy books. Most of them were romantasy. This I don't think is. This is The Shadow of What Was Lost. I love that title. By James Islington. This blurb right here compares it to The Wheel of Time, which I've not finished that series. I've learned that I can't like binge 7, 8 books in the same series anymore. I do prefer to break it up, otherwise I get bored and then I want something different. I like variety in my reading. So, in the shadow of what was lost, as destiny calls, a journey begins. It has been 20 years since the godlike augurs were overthrown and killed. Those who once served them, the gifted, were spared only after accepting the rebellion's 4 tenets, which vastly limited their powers. Davian suffers the consequences of a war lost before he was ever born. When he discovers that he wields the forbidden power of the augurs, he sets into motion a chain of events that will change everything. To the west, a young man whose fate is intertwined with Davian's wakes up in a forest covered in blood and with no memory of who he is. And in the far north, an ancient enemy begins to stir. Can't wait. One more book to show you and then I'll make a little comment. So, after I picked up The Shadow of What Was Lost, I actually moved over to the fantasy section. That's where I picked up the Terry Goodkind book. And I picked up John Gwynne's The Shadow of the Gods. Legends tell of the great long-ago battle of the gods. When the gods fought, it was a battle so savage they destroyed themselves, leaving nothing but their bones in the broken land of Figrid in their wake. Now, as whispers of war echo over the fjords and across the plains, fate follows in the footsteps of 3 warriors, a huntress on a perilous quest, a noblewoman pursuing battle fame, and a thrall seeking retribution among the mercenaries known as the Bloodsworn. All 3 will change the course of the world as it once more falls under the shadow of the gods. This looks like it's like a Norse mythology-ish kind of fantasy, and I'm really into that after I read A Fate Inked in Blood, which is more romantasy. So I wanted a little bit more Norse-based fantasy. Okay, so yesterday I was going to do a video of me picking through the books that I bought on Thursday and reading, the first paragraph or page and choosing on camera my own book, the book I'm going to read, sorry. But I sat down and I started, and then I ended up choosing a book before I even finished reading the first page of each of the books. And that book that I picked, I think is appropriate for today, for this weekend, because this is the 3rd anniversary of my father's death. I think it was 21 or... Folks, anything that happened between 2020 and present is all like the same year for me. So, if I'm wrong, please forgive me. But, anyway, anniversary of my father's passing. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. But anyway, so I'm reading now Dune. Picked this up on a whim, but again, it was because the first couple of pages really captured me. Sci-fi is not normally my thing, but if you don't know the story, I'll read the back of it for you. Set on the desert planet Arrakis, Dune is the story of Paul Atreides, who would become known as Muad'Dib, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, and of a great family's ambition to bring to fruition humankind's most ancient and unattainable dream. there's 2 movies out about it, new movies. There was a movie in the 90s, I think, on Dune, but it got bad reviews. Anywho, so I saw somebody tweet about Herbert and eugenics this morning, and it ended up going down a rabbit hole and reading an article in Scientific American about Dune and cryptic female choice, which is quite interesting. I only did a small rabbit hole. I did not do a whole deep dive, otherwise I would still be over there at my computer. Anywho, I am really enjoying this. I understand that there might be some problematic things in this, but I'm just going to enjoy it and not get into the weeds. This is a long one, though. I am not even a quarter of the way through. This is where I am. This is the halfway mark. It is a slower read. I got 71 pages last night. But I'm enjoying it so far, and I'll let you know what I think about it. Finally, because I had bought all that and more, I ended up with $35 rewards points at Barnes & Noble, and I'd had this next book on my wish list, next 2 books on my wish list for a while. No, not a while. It's been like maybe a week, because I had bought another Norse fantasy, A Flame in the North by Lilith Saintcrow, and while I was looking her up, I found she had written several other books. I picked up Spring's Arcana and The Saltback Tree by Lilith Saintcrow, and because I had $35 credit, I got these for $2.55. Both of them. Woohoo! Anywho, I do look forward. This seems like a kind of modern fantasy, but it's also, it seems to, this one blurb says that it's based around the magic of Baba Yaga, who is a figure in folklore and mythology. And let me tell you about Spring's Arcana. This is the way to the dead god's heart. Nat Drozdova is desperate to save a life. Doctors can do little for her cancer-ridden mother, who insists there is only one cure and that Nat must visit a skyscraper in Manhattan to get it. Amid a snow-locked city, inside a sleek glass-walled office, period. Nat makes her plea and is... No, I think that might be a comma. No, it's a period. And is whisked into a terrifying new world. For the skyscraper holds a hungry winter goddess who has the power to cure her mother if Nat finds a stolen object of great power. There's always an if, isn't there? Now, Nat must travel with a razor-wielding assassin across an American continent brimming with terror. Terror, wonder, and hungry divinities with every reason to consume a young woman. This kind of gives me American Gods vibes. For her ailing mother is indeed suffering no ordinary illness, and Nat Drozdova is no ordinary girl. Blood calls to blood, magic to magic, and a daughter may indeed save what she loves if it doesn't consume her first. I've got so much to read and so little time, but I'm on a long weekend this weekend. Sorry. Excuse me. It's allergy season here. Everything is covered in pollen. It is, and I spend my days sniffling, watery eyes, and itching because, anywho, The Salt Black Tree was actually the first book that I looked at, other book by Lilith Saintcrow that I looked at, but this is book 2 of the duology, of the Dead God's Heart duology. Nat has crossed half the continent in search of the only thing powerful enough to trade for a beautiful, voracious, dying mother's life. Yet, now she knows the secret of her own birth and that she's been lied to her whole life. The road to the Dead God's Heart ends at the Salt Black Tree, but to find it, Nat must pay a terrible price. Pursued by mouthless shadows, hungry for the blood of new divinity, as well as the razor-wielding god of thieves, is that the assassin? Nat is on her own. Her journey leads through a wilderness of gods old and new, across a country as restless as its mortal inhabitants, and it's too late to back out now. Blood may not always prevail, magic may not always work, and the young Drozdova is faced with an impossible choice. Save her mother's very existence, or accept the consequences of her own. Whew. I will probably need a palate cleanser before I read that, because that sounds deep and dark, and I'm gonna love it. But it might be a little bit heavy. Anywho, really can't wait to read that. So, that's my week in books, and we'll see what happens. Oh, I'll only have a cookbook arriving this coming week. So I don't have any books planned to buy. But we've all seen how that works out. It could happen. It could happen. What I might do is go to one of my many TBR carts and talk about, and do a thing where I try to pick out my next book to read and talk about some of the books that I've bought to kind of reintroduce them to myself, because I have a lot of books. Anywho, that's me. Happy reading!